joining us virtually from India for this discussion on the circular economy. It's a subject I followed very closely because of the efforts, very aggressive efforts by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia within the G20 context to make sure that this was on the agenda, understood, and most importantly, adopted. But what does it mean over the next 10 years is the real question here. And in the earlier part of this week, I was on a virtual discussion with Professor Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum, and he talked about the pace of exponential growth and how much change will accelerate over the next 10 years. So our normal assumptions of change over the last 10 years, which was radical change, is nothing compared to what's going to be hitting us by 2032. So we have this snapshot of what it means for the global economy and also the global circular carbon economy as well. Let me introduce our panelists. As I noted, most of them are on stage. Dr. Fahad al-Sherehy, he's with SABIC. Engineer Khaled Abdul Alif with the Office of the Minister of Energy, His Royal Highness Abdulaziz bin Salman. Engineer Ali Al-Ghamdi is the Chief Executive Officer of the National Center for Environmental Compliance. Dr. John Bradford, Vice President of Global Initiatives for the Colorado School of Mines, the renowned educational center for this industry, of course. Dr. Martin Keller, Director and President of National Renewable Energy Laboratory and Alliance for Sustainable Energy. Engineer Ziyad Al-Shiha is the Chief Executive Officer of Saudi Investment Recycling. And joining us from India, you see in the box there, Sundara Raman, the Vice President of Raw Materials from Tata Steel. Thanks for joining us virtually. Appreciate having you on the session here. Let's start with SABIC and Dr. Al-Sherehy, which I think is really interesting if we pick up on this context of the G20 initiatives, and I think we'll do the same with Engineer Al-Leef. What did we understand of that work over the last year itself and delivering against the promise of proof pointing the circular economy when it comes to this industry in particular? Please.
Thank you very much. I think our industry, and here mineral is not an exception, facing 5 key challenges. One, which is related to the government as well as the regional compliance requirements. Second, our customer expectation and demand for low carbon footprint products. Third, which is the investors as well as the financial institution also, they are demanding the same. One important element is the transparency and reporting required by the key stakeholders, and also the disruptive innovation. So this is a key challenges facing the industry. What we are seeing and what we are considering in SABIC, circular carbon economy, which Saudi Arabia successfully during the G20 year before last year, get the approval from the G20 as a platform, as a framework to address the climate change. And we see it really the real enabler to achieve our carbon neutrality strategy, because it takes into consideration different options, around the 4 R's, which is the reuse, reduce, recycle, remove. So this will be very helpful where you are operating as a global company like SABIC, different geographical location where there are some advantage in some area, affordability in different areas. So the circular carbon economy, we found it as a key enabler for us in our industry to help us to achieve our ambition when it comes to the carbon neutrality.
Okay, thanks very much, and I appreciate you being so direct. Let's bring in Engineer Alif. How does this apply to mining? I know the work that's been done, for example, by His Excellency Amin Nasser at Aramco in collaboration with the Minister of Energy, of course. How do you find it applying to the mining sector, and can you have the same proof points as in oil and gas?
Thank you, John. John, as a matter of fact, just building on what Fahad has said, we realized when we came here in the G20 in Riyadh that we really need to have an inclusive solution that would address the issue of climate, whether you are utilizing renewable energy or utilizing hydrocarbons or fossil fuels. And from that point of view, we really wanted to see, looking at the realities also, that science clearly says that negative emission is going to be important as we move in the future. We know that there are different circumstances between different regions with very high endowments of hydrocarbons that are utilizing and others who doesn't. Utilizing also knowing that all these realities are there. Circular carbon economy came as a solution, hopefully for that. And why it was a solution, John? Because it is basically, traditional methods will not work for the future. We have great challenges that we need to address as we move in addressing climate goals that we have agreed to in Paris Agreement. Now, with that, if we look at circular economy, it deals with materials and makes sure that materials are not done upstream and that we are recycling them at the same time. But, that would not work anymore with the new world that we have and with the challenges and ambitions that we have in climate. We really need to look beyond that into not only material, but also emission. So if you look at, and we know that the mineral industry is highly intensive industry with regards to energy, and recognizing that resource efficiency becomes very important in the pre-combustion and on the upstream, where you are reducing the materials that you want to use. However, when you use it, you really need to also address that emission that comes in and make sure that it does not go to the atmosphere. So circular economy is on the material, on the pre-combustion, and circular economy will address the emission side when it goes beyond combustion, where you need to capture it and you do something with it. You utilize it, you reuse it, you recycle it, or you remove it if you are not able to do any of the other valuable practices. So from that point of view, I think they complement each other, and basically they're just a new innovation that are much more inclusive.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to circle back on some of the topics you raised here, because there's superb on the efficiency, and then also the investment needed to make the carbon circular economy work, which I think is excellent. Engineer Ghamdi, do you want to pick up from the National Center for Environmental Compliance the investment required here to have the compliance that you're looking for as an organization? Because it's not just the mining part of this equation, but it's also making it as environmentally friendly as possible. Do you want to address that?
Yes, good afternoon, June, to all of you. Definitely, this is very important, and we think that mining is not different than another activity that have an environmental impact and to the society. It's very important, really, to use the circular economy as a vehicle for compliance. We believe in National Center of Environmental Compliance that this vehicle will help us to get us complying to the requirement of the standards and the regulation and the law, but definitely it will add an extra mileage to us to solve a lot of challenges that today the mining stereotyped that they are not environmental friendly. Definitely it will help us to make sure that we manage wastewater and water security in Saudi Arabia. It will help us to manage waste management and recycling of this. And in Saudi Arabia, we have a lot of good cases and stories. Maybe Mr. Sheha, Engineer Sheha, could give us certain example where we utilize really the waste of construction back to be recycled, go to the construction again. And I'm sure there is a lot of story within the mining that will help us from circular economy as a vehicle to comply.
Thank you very much. Let's bring in Dr. Bradford. And one of the issues I know you wanted to address, and it's a thread that's gone all the way through the last 2 days of the discussions, even if I'm doing them virtually, is the need for talent. Talent leads to innovation. Innovation leads to contributions here to the carbon circular economy. You said the next generation of engineers and innovators, right, Doctor?
Yeah, correct. So if we think about what's happening with the energy transition, we have two enormous infrastructure builds that need to happen. One is for carbon capture, utilization, and sequestration, so we can better manage our emissions. The other is for renewables and other non-traditional energy sources. A third is with the mining industry and the infrastructure that's needed to support all of that. The reality is that from a materials perspective, the circular economy is aspirational because we simply don't have the materials in the system now to support all that infrastructure growth. If we think about the other side of this, which is that we need to grow the workforce and the talent to support the mining sector to build the infrastructure, we recognize that there's an opportunity to train this generation of talent and leaders in a different way than we have in the past. So if you look at the circular economy, there's many different interdisciplinary interfaces there, which includes economics and different technical disciplines. In a traditional academic setting, we're trained to think in a very much siloed way. And over time, with work experience, we can learn to think in this more interdisciplinary way. We're trying to accelerate that process by transforming the way that we educate students and making sure that they have depth of understanding in multiple areas and can bring that to bear on solving problems at a much earlier stage in their career. And with things changing so rapidly in the timeline that goals have been set for, that's going to be really required to accelerate our process for innovation.
Excellent. Dr. Keller, Martin Keller, are we being realistic with the time frames? I think that was a great point that Dr. Bradford just made there, because the aspirations are there. The kingdom is a perfect example of that because there's stretch targets from His Royal Highness Mohammed bin Salman, which is actually a good thing because you have to stretch to hit targets. But are we being realistic globally and in the region about the carbon circular economy to make it happen, become a reality?
Yeah, I think I would say when we put our minds into this, I think it's realistic. We can do this. I think we have a lot of the technology right now. We still have some gaps, which we have to figure out. I mean, we all talk about hydrogen. I mean, hydrogen is in everybody's mind, so we have to figure out how we're dealing with this. But, you know, I want to come back to the concept also of the circular economy, because when you look into this, what we also need is to put a research element into the circular economy argument. And I want to explain this perhaps in a little bit. When you look into this, for example, batteries. So we in the research community over the years worked really hard to increase, energy density, make it as lightweight as possible. And then we realized, oh, by the way, yeah, we have to recycle this down the road if everybody drives electric cars. So the circular economy, a lot of times the concept of recycling is an afterthought. So, and this is now what I think we have to change. For the energy materials of the future, we have to build in the reuse of the materials in the design of the concept of the materials. And every time where we don't have this, leads to issues. For example, plastics is an amazing material, but why do we have so much plastic floating around in the oceans? Because we really don't have a really good process of recycling this. That's why no aluminum cans floating around, because we know very well how to recycle them. So the circular economy argument will only work if we put the research and earlier into the design of the energy materials to really develop energy technologies which we know we can reuse the materials.
Great. And let's bring in engineer Shiha to that point. Are we learning at the fast pace here within Saudi Arabia on the recycling front? And when it comes to the mining industry, which is in its nascent stages in the kingdom, can we put these practices into place now before the exploration is really at a full tilt here, in your view?
Well, let me start by saying, if I can summarize what we are about to see and what we're seeing today into two things. First, the world is challenged of utilizing materials at an unprecedented rate. And if we go back to the basic of science today, This is the periodic table, like you can see here. It has 114 elements. The news says that 60 elements of those 114 basic elements that exist on Earth are non-renewable. And by non-renewable, I say that they degrade if you use them. Your battery on your cell phone, your battery on the car. Take, for example, the basic element lithium. It degrades into lithium oxide, which means that we will be challenged with finding the right resources. Today, I don't think there is enough lithium to power all the vehicles on Earth. It will take 1 to 2 years for it to deplete completely. So this is the challenge. But again, with challenge comes an opportunity. Here is a report from BBC also saying 1 ton of gold ore produces 1 gram of gold. However, 1 ton of cell phone without the batteries produces 300 grams of gold. That takes me to the basic fundamental thing that recycling is not only a luxury, is not only a wish list. It has to be intrinsically integrated in our economy, society, the whole supply chain. From the time we should not use material if we don't have to. If we decide to use them, we should reduce the consumption. If we have to use them with reduction of consumption, we have to reuse them and then recycle them mechanically and then recycle them chemically so that we preserve the materials that we are blessed with so far. And that is did not escape the vision of His Royal Highness Crown Prince when he said, he gave us a very, very ambitious target that the kingdom is working on today. 94% of the landfills will be diverted by 2035. As today in the kingdom, only 5% get diverted from the landfills. Only 5%. 95% goes to the landfill. With the vision of His Royal Highness and the kingdom said by 2035, 95% or 94% will be diverted from the landfills, meaning to say that we are utilizing and recycling all of those materials and putting them back into the circular economy. And that's the essence of circular economy, if I may summarize it.
Okay, very good. Let me just follow up with you quickly then. Do you feel comfortable with those targets that His Royal Highness put forward on the table, that they can be hit from where you're sitting today, Engineer Al-Shiha?
Absolutely, and that's why it's realistic, because it's not taken like 1 year, it's taking like over 14 or 15 years, and it has to be backed by an infrastructure programs. This is including the recycling facilities, waste to energy, producing hydrogen like was mentioned previously, and absolutely it will basically take care of all the landfills in the kingdom over the next 14 years. We believe that this is a very reasonable target to reach. Other countries, I have to say, took 30, 40 years to reach where they are today, but they started earlier when the technology was not there. Today, we don't have to start from where others started. We can start from where others have ended, given the technology and given the huge advancement in technology and the thing that has been discussed here, the development in R&D, the education, and so on. Because we have recorded very, very good success on those elements of development, R&D, and infrastructure and technology that are available today that were not probably available 30, 40 years ago.
Yes, this is the concept, and the thread I was bringing up in the other panels is that we could leapfrog in the kingdom to advance the pace of change. Let's get a sense from India and Tata Steel, one of the largest steel manufacturers in the world, a carbon-intense business. It was the backbone of the Industrial Revolution. Mr. Rahman, what are we learning today about the carbon circular economy when it comes to your operations? I know you've been experimenting, you've been implementing. What can you tell this audience?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon to all the audience and my co-panelists. So yeah, as you rightly mentioned, we are in mining business for more than 115 years. In fact, Tata Steel is the first integrated private steel player in Asia. So in last 115 years, we have made a lot of changes in our way of working. It's not only when I talk about circular economy, I would just like to call on three things. One is how can we take out the waste? The waste should be out. The waste should not be the major part of whatever we produce. Second, there is a difference between what is consumed and what is durable. Earlier, always our focus was on durable, but durable means the best example is plastic. One of our co-panelists mentioned that today we don't have any technology to make it zero. So, but we have technology to make others which are not durable, but which are biologically they are friendly to the environment. Third is, even if we use energy, how can that energy also a renewable energy? So I would just give an example of a coal mine. We have been operating the coal mines for 100 years. When I produce from the mother earth, the rock wool which we call, it produces the clean coal. The clean coal is the one which is used by the steel plant. But at the same time, if I produce 45% of the metallurgical clean coal, I also produce 55% of the byproducts. How do I use these byproducts? There the challenge comes. So if I just put in the byproducts as the rejects, so when we saw that the rejects are there, which are almost 55 to 56% ash, we have put up a power plant, fluid but power plant, which can take these rejects and it can generate power. Similarly, the other products we call tailings and middlings. And these tailings and middlings can be used by the brick kiln manufacturers. Also, it can go to the powerhouse. That means the 100 tons which I am processing, all 100 tons I am using it. At the same time, the ash that is generated, those ash we are making bricks. So that those bricks are used by the community, by the township, because we have got huge townships across all our mining locations, which are run by us. So we use that. So this is one part. Second is, as I have seen some of the panelists have mentioned, it is not only how I make the products, how my community I'm taking along with me, how I'm educating my community is also is a last thing which depends on the circular economy. Because the way we see that the community should not feel that we are making money at the same time they are left out. So the day one we started educating the community that the circular economy is not only beneficial to the company, it is also beneficial to them. And the skill upgradation of the people and also the way we take them part of our economy, it gives a larger perspective. Because as you know, all these minerals are available in areas where the indigenous people are there. And there, even they feel that even cutting the trees can also be one of the livelihoods for them. So how can we bring them to our way of living and how can we educate them and bring them part of our mainstream? So this also helps a lot of things because we see it's not only the mining industry that creates a lot of pollution. Maybe the ancillary industries also create a lot of pollution. How can we reduce that? So the Tata Steel today, if I say we have got 3 major plants in India, we have around 2.2 tons of carbon emission per ton of crude steel. We have taken a target of less than 2 tons by 2025 and around 1.88 tons by 2030. So that's the target we have taken as per steel plant. At the same time, the plant also includes all the raw materials because all our raw materials, whether it's coal, iron ore, manganese, chrome, everything is part of that. That's why we are an integrated steel plant. So that is my experience being 30 years as a mining engineer in this industry. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for all the clarity. In this next round of questioning, I'd like to move, because this is a very important panel, to come out with concrete solutions or roadmaps as a working session and even a call to action. So I was just going to have you take that discipline of that spirit of my question here to Dr. Al-Sherehy of SABIC. I had a chance to meet your CEO and your team many times over the last 2 or 3 years. And this is embedded into the SABIC culture. But what is the next call to action, do you think, for SABIC and its collaboration with Aramco and making this a reality in the mining sector, would you suggest, Dr. Al-Sherehy?
Thank you very much. I think the name of the game here is how to turn the challenges into opportunities. I think we have a great opportunity in this country when it comes to having the right infrastructure Now we have the Circular Carbon Economy Program, we have the Saudi Green Initiatives, and also we have the renewable energy as an intrinsic part of the overall plan. So considering all the infrastructure that to be built and to be invested in Saudi Arabia, will create a great opportunity for our industry when it comes to renewable energy, when it comes to the CCUS, when it comes to the blue and green hydrogen, where it can create, you can say, an opportunity or a platform to address the carbon neutrality and also to attract investment and enabling the current industry to bring it to the next level, as well as attracting the high energy intensive industry into Saudi Arabia, where we are gifted with, you can say, the opportunity we have in the East Coast. We have the, you can say, the blue hydrogen, where we have the sequestration hubs, as well as in the green in the west side. So this is a kind of a great opportunity for the industry, including the mining, to have products which is now the world they are waiting for and demanding for low carbon footprint products.
Okay, very quickly, if I can, because we don't have a lot of time, but SABIC plays on the global stage in a large way in the United States as well. How do you think you compare against your global peers when it comes to not only the carbon circular economy, but emissions? Are you doing as better or at par with the global competition from the kingdom?
I think we are in a leading position, and even we are seeing the sustainability to be a global leader when it comes to the sustainability. We are addressing the sustainability from both angles. One is how we are dealing and handling our operation and our carbon footprint globally. The second is also SABIC is a material hub when it comes to providing solution to enable our customer and the downstream industry. So we are acting in both fronts. What we are doing in our industry or in our facilities, and this is the carbon footprint, and if we compare ourselves with others, we can say we are in a leading position. When it comes to the solution and the portfolio of products and material that we are providing into the market, we are almost introducing more than 150 products every year. Today, for example, if you see our steel, which is very close to the mining here, our carbon footprint for our products is lower than the benchmark when you're comparing even with the top quartile. So we are on the right track, and as I said, we are having our now carbon neutrality strategy. We already announced our commitment for the carbon neutrality by 2050, as well as having the interim target to have a reduction of 20% absolute emission by 2030.
Okay, thanks very much. Let's bring in Engineer Leef, and I wanted to see if you can share the strategy in this kind of working session that I'm trying to create in terms of the tone and the call to action. How do you get the Minister of Economy to collaborate with the Minister of Industry and Mineral Resources, and where you have Aramco and SABIC and Ma'aden, these key pillars of the economy collaborating at the pace you're hoping for? Give us a realistic assessment.
Which was a great challenge, John, coming out of Paris, recognizing the challenging goals that we had. We really had to put things in perspective. And I think the first step was the G20 and the success in the endorsement of circular carbon economy. That really gave us the basic foundation to move forward. Then, as part of that, recognizing that the mineral industry is going to be an extremely important industry in the economic diversification, and the vision of His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. That was one of those sectors that would have to be looked at very closely. And the two initiatives that the Kingdom has created, the Saudi Green Initiative and the Middle East Green Initiative, is nothing but two down-to-earth, real projects that have clear initiatives. One of them that Ziyad has shared with us, which is the 94% recycling of waste, as well as the initiative on energy mix, which is very important for the mineral industry, where you're looking at displacing liquid fuels with 50% renewable and gas, and other initiatives that are very, really courageous at that level on hydrogens and other. All these initiatives are not only targets and goals. They do have a Supreme Committee that is looking after them, monitoring their progress, headed by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, and most of the government cabinets that are related to issues that would have to do with emissions. It really does have another institution, which is a non-profit institutions that are doing and following this with the goals that has been set by the kingdom, whether it is the net zero goal that we have announced, or the doubling of the nationally determined contributions that we have announced in Glasgow. And I think all of those measures have those initiatives, and those initiatives has milestones. They are already budgeted for. So, we really think that those aspirations go beyond aspirations. They come to a point where we could say that they are really well planned, and we're hoping that we can achieve those goals.
Okay, thanks very much. The clarity on this panel is fantastic. Engineer Ghamdi, we brought up this subject with Mr. Al-Seef there about the 2060 target. And if you looked at it initially, you'd say, well, that's not that ambitious, and Aramco said it for 2050. But would you say it's more realistic, and the rest of the world should take a kind of a sober pill here, if you will, and say what is realistic when you're trying to develop the economy and do it at a fast pace of innovation or not?
Yeah, well, definitely this is, it's very fantastic to Saudi Arabia and to the world. We need to ensure that we work together, we partnership together, and make sure that this target is going to be achieved on time. Definitely, we understand that mining could be one of the key players that will make us succeed in this initiative. It will help us a lot, but definitely a partnership, communication, advocacy about that, ensure everybody is doing their part, using the technology today to ensure that we take that to the target. This is something that we will work to everybody. From an environmental perspective, definitely an initiative like that will add a lot of us to ensure that we meet the requirement of environmental regulation and compliance. It will add an extra mile to us to make sure that we comply to air quality regulations, and also help us to become one of the best top 50 worldwide from an environmental perspective.
Okay, very good. Let's get Dr. Bradford back into the conversation from the Colorado School of Mines. And one of the notes you said here is that you have to have a sober look at the industry itself, because there are limitations today, how much you can recycle, how much you can capture, the investment that I brought up as well. Are you confident about the innovation levels and the support on the investment side to make it happen, to break through some of the barriers you have in the industry?
I think that the investment levels, the investment in research is going to have to increase significantly in the near future. So if you think about the system, so we've already talked about recycling end-of-life products and how we can extract additional materials, critical materials from that. Another element of that is extracting materials from non-conventional streams. So these would be potentially waste streams from other operations, say in extracting copper from copper ore. You have a certain amount of waste product from that contains rare earths, so we can extract rare earths from that. So that's possible, certainly even with current technology. Another example is lithium from produced water in oil and gas operations. But typically, these are in very low concentrations. And right now, it can't be done in a way that's economic. So we need to really invest in research to develop processes for extraction from those streams to make it economically viable. And I think all sources, to meet the demands that are coming, all sources are ones that are going to have to be exploited. And we're really going to have to work on that. So I think we can do it. We need to have the will there to make it happen, and governments and industry need to put the investment there to make it happen as well.
Okay, good. Martin Keller, can the kingdom lead in this front, though? Can it prove the naysayers wrong, that you can be the leading oil exporter, for example, big developer of gas, moving into mining, and tick all the boxes in terms of goals here to 2050?
It's for me. The question is for Abu Leef.
Yeah. No, it's for Dr. Keller. Martin Keller?
For me. Sorry. So look there. I think what we need to do is, let me phrase this a little bit in a different way. Also, what we have heard. I mean, I fully agree that innovation is extremely important, but I would add two pillars. And again, this is what I'm also seeing here in the kingdom, that there is this really now big demand to see how can we make an impact, how can we make a change. One of the things which we sometimes need to explore to make these goals, how do we take innovation and faster scale it that we can deploy technology? Now let's bring this example on solar. It took about 30 years from the concept of solar to be now really, in many areas of the world, the cheapest way of producing electricity. We do not have 30 years' time. And again, this is what for us from Enel, what we are watching very interested in here, and some of the meetings we had is really here in the kingdom, I'm seeing this now, this desire to really step ahead and make an impact. Key will be that we do these three pillars. Number one is we need to continue to innovate. Number two, we have to deploy. A lot of times you're hearing this, that people say, well, we're still waiting another 5 years before the next technology comes around. We don't have the time. We have to get technology into the marketplace. But one very important element overarching all of this is the systems integration and planning. And this is honestly on a global scale, where sometimes we're falling short, where we're doing projects here and there, but we need to see the whole energy systems will change so dramatically that we need to put a plan in place how we're doing this. Because we don't want to invest in some technology and then this is a side element and then the light goes out. So we need to look into the systems integration and the system planning at all the levels to bring this together. And what I'm seeing here in all the discussion I also had here in the last couple of days, I'm seeing here that the big concept in the kingdom is moving in an amazing direction, which for me is super exciting.
Okay, good. That's interesting in itself, what you're suggesting here about that collaboration that our representatives from the Minister of Energy and SABIC were talking about. Engineer Shiha, do you want to pick up on Dr. Keller's view here about systems integration? What's missing in the piece of the puzzle right now in the kingdom, do you think, to hit these targets and to the stretch targets that are put forward by the Crown Prince?
Absolutely. I think what the kingdom is doing today is putting the jig puzzle together. Part of it saying we will do, there is a mission, there is an ambition, and there is a vision, and so on. It's good to talk about these things, and it's always good to have a guiding principle of where you want to be. But I think without anchoring solid things on the ground, case in point, SIRC, the Saudi Investment Recycling Company, backed by a system and backed by a regulatory framework that has been already approved by the government. So you have to have a regulation body, you have to have an enabling company, which is the Saudi Investment Recycling Company, part of that jig puzzle, which we invite, by the way, all the investors, interested investors in the recycling across the entire supply chain. We intend to spend close to no less than $10 billion over the coming few years to address part of that cycle. And back to your question, John, you asked earlier, how confident are we? And I say we are very confident because the kingdom today is putting all the anchors on the ground and boots on the grounds to make it happen. to make those investments happen, because there is a point talking about it and there is a point and case about executing it on the grounds. And we have already started investment. We have already started investments on the ground and putting all the plans that are ready now to move. So there are real investments with hard cash put, acquiring companies. And there are, of course, plans so that we cover the entire supply chain. So we believe that with that, I think the kingdom is very, very well positioned to attract local investors, international investors alike, to come and partner with SIRC to move on that endeavor to realize the vision set by the kingdom and what my colleague here, Dr. Khaled, alluded to. If we address that 94% landfill diversion, make no mistake, we basically get 10% of the emission of the kingdom reduction get realized by just, we share the same earth, sand, air, water, land. So if we avoid going to the landfills and we recycle all of that 100%, it means that we have reduced 10% of the equivalent emission of methane to the atmosphere. And that's truly, truly a lot, in line with what the leadership of the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Energy, trying to do collaboratively together. And I truly, truly, out of this, invite companies to partner with us. So 1-800 call SIRC, and we will be your partner basically to go into recycling solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, for mankind, for the planet that we share, this will be a solution, and we will need every resource, like my colleagues here said, to exploit every resource to put it back into the circular economy. So 1-800 call SIRC.
I gotta love that. It felt like I was going to order a pizza there. The invitation with the call SIRC, but it's something that sticks in our minds. Engineer Rahman, I want you to do the same thing, but I'm going to start with you and then have the rest of the 6 panelists very quickly in our 4.5 minutes. If I was going to ask you for the #1 moonshot to make the best impact over the next 10 years to 2032, what would it be? Do it in 30 seconds each if you can, and then I'll conclude. Engineer Rahman.
Yeah, well, if you say that what is the best thing that could happen in next 10 years is how can we reduce the current steel production. If you see it is blast furnace, BOF route is 70%. And only 30% is the scrap route of EAF, we call electric arc furnace. And the way it is seen, in next 10 years, it can reverse. If it can reverse that 30 to 70, though it's counterproductive to mining, but for mankind, it would be very good. So that is one single thing which I would like to see, that how can it be 30 to 70 if it can happen in steel, then for other minerals like aluminum, copper and all, it can be more than that. So that's what I think. And also my compliments to the kingdom, saying that the discussion is not that how can they be the best mining company. They are not thinking how can we lead the entire world in carbon neutrality or carbon negative circular economy. It's a wonderful thing. We're starting mining, and I feel that the 10 principles of ICMM, the International Council of Mining and Metals, if we follow that, I think that's the best thing the kingdom can do for the mankind. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Engineer Rahman. Dr. Sherehy, in 30 seconds, give us your biggest drive right now that has the biggest impact for this sector.
I think the collaboration partnership, nobody can do it alone. I think we need to work together for the entire value chain, and the success formula, 1 + 1 = 2.
Got it. Engineer Leef, go ahead, from the Minister of Energy.
I would say I would build on what Fahad said and say deployment, the commerciality of R&D and innovation.
Great. I would imagine when you go into a meeting with His Royal Highness, with the stretch targets, that's going to be required. Engineer Ghamdi?
Yes, definitely. Partnership, communication. I think we need a good partnership, government to government, government to business, and do not forget the society to make them involved to succeed together.
I'm glad you brought up society, because that's a common thread that I'll talk about in a moment here, but getting the consumer to understand the steep hill that we climb and their role in doing so and supporting the mining sector. Dr. John Bradford, it's your turn.
It's building the workforce. So without the workforce, none of this will happen. And we have to change the perception of these industries Exciting technology is one thing. Perhaps a more important thing is getting the next generation to recognize that this is not going to happen without them, and the world needs their help to make this happen. And that's going to happen through building that perception. Will happen through partnership between universities, governments, and industry to help change that perception.
Good. And the role of the sector, of course, in the drive to renewable energy as well, because the ingredients are so vital. Dr. Martin Keller, the floor is yours.
So I would link into this what we also heard. I think international collaboration, get the world's brightest minds together. The problem is bigger than one institution or one country. We need to all work together. Technology-wise, I would argue that we know how to do electricity. I think this is why hydrogen becomes very important to decarbonize many elements of the economy.
I'm going to call on 1-800-SIRC, Engineer Al-Shia, in 30 seconds.
Thank you. I would say the world today have seen manifestation of high prices of commodity, tripled, quadrupled sometimes, and this is a manifestation of stress on our natural resources. And we have limited, but I would say while we are challenged, and there is lots of challenges, let us all together, the people of this earth, let us all together transform those challenges into great opportunities. I'm extremely optimistic, and I second what everybody said. It's a total integrated solution. It requires the collaboration of R&D, universities, the people, the social behavior, the integration, the technical solution, the projects on the ground, the government, the enablers. All of those have to work in a collaborative to transform challenges into great opportunities moving forward.
Great. I had a similar conversation with my two daughters last night, Engineer. It's interesting because there's a real threat that the millennials and the Gen Zers don't have confidence in the future. So I think we also have to translate that to them as well, that these efforts are underway. Let's ask for a nice round of applause for our audience, and I'll come back up with Ryan in just a moment. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.